All right, let's jump into it. Another deep dive. This time, we're heading down to Bogota, Colombia.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
It is. We're going to be looking at Colegio Esmeralda Arboleda Cadavid.
Okay.
It's a school, and we've got a whole bunch of their curriculum documents, all kinds of stuff. And let me tell you, this school, they're doing things a little differently.
Really? In what way?
Well, we're going to get into all that, but they're not just, teaching to the test or anything like that. They really want their students to be engaged and learn and apply what they're learning.
I like that, making it real.
Yeah, exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
So we'll get into all of that, but first, I guess we should give everybody a little overview.
Sure.
So we're looking at, like I said, a whole bunch of documents that they've put out about how they teach all the different subjects, everything from science to math to the arts.
Sounds comprehensive.
It is. And our goal today is to give our listeners a real sense of what makes this school tick, what their educational philosophy is, and how they're putting that into practice.
I'm ready to dive in.
Me too. Should we start with science?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So one of the things that really stood out to me in their science curriculum is this big emphasis on something called CTSA.
CTSA.
Yeah, it stands for Science, Technology, Society, and Environment.
Okay.
And it's all about helping students see science not just as a bunch of facts in a textbook, but as something that's directly relevant to their lives and their community.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's like, sure, you need to know the basics, but you also need to understand how science is playing out in the real world.
Exactly. So it's about making those connections.
Yes. And they really put this into practice. They've got this incredible school garden that's like a living laboratory for all sorts of cool projects.
Wait, they have a garden as part of their science curriculum.
They do. And it's not just like, a little patch of herbs. This thing is legit.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So they're using it to tackle real issues. Like they did this whole project mapping out the local waste disposal problem in their neighborhood.
Well,
and then they started testing different composting solutions right there in the garden to see what worked best. Hands-on science with a purpose,
That's so cool. So the students are actually getting involved in finding solutions to real community problems.
Exactly. They're not just learning about science, they're doing science.
I love it.
And get this, the garden is also a central part of their peace-building initiative.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Peace building and gardening, how do those two connect?
I know, right? It sounds kind of out there, but they've recognized that connecting with nature can be transformative for people. And they're using the garden as this space for students to work together, to learn about cooperation, and to develop a sense of shared responsibility.
So they're using gardening to teach valuable life lessons and address social-emotional learning.
Precisely. It's like hands-on lessons in collaboration and patience and understanding, all those things that are essential for building peaceful relationships.
It's such a creative approach.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to science either. Their social studies program is also built around understanding and addressing social issues that are relevant to their students' lives.
So it's about going beyond textbook history and looking at the real challenges their community is facing.
Exactly. And they're not afraid to acknowledge that the national curriculum might not fully address the specific needs of their community.
Right, because every context is different.
Exactly. They want to meet their students where they are, so to speak. And to do that, they've done some really impressive analysis of their student body, looking at things like socioeconomic factors, family structures, the whole picture.
So they can tailor their approach to each student's unique needs and background.
Exactly. Speaking of unique needs, let's move on to arts education.
Okay.
Now, their passion for the arts really jumped out at me.
Really? How so?
They just see it as such a fundamental part of a well-rounded education, and they really put their money where their mouth is, so to speak.
I see. They walk the walk.
Yeah, they do. And what's really interesting here is how they connect arts education to this idea of holistic learning.
Holistic learning.
Yeah, they see this strong link between knowledge, emotional development, and creative expression.
So it's not just about teaching kids to paint or play an instrument.
No, it's about helping them connect with their emotions and the world around them in a deeper way.
I like that.
Yeah. They're also really big on these metacognitive strategies in arts education.
Metacognitive strategies. Now, those sound kind of complicated.
They do, but it's really about encouraging students to think about their own thinking.
Okay, so break that down for me. What would that look like in practice?
Well, for example, they have students keep journals about their art-making process, not just the final product.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? So they're asked to reflect on things like what challenged them, what they learned, how their thinking changed along the way.
So it's like self-reflection for art?
Exactly. It helps them become more aware of how they learn and what works best for them.
I like that. It's about building those self-awareness muscles.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about languages.
Okay,
So their approach to English language learning is super practical and communicative.
practical and communicative. Can you do me some examples?
Sure. They're using a sociocultural approach, which basically means they recognize that language learning is inherently social.
Right. We learn best by interacting with others.
Exactly. And they really emphasize real-world application, weaving in themes like environmental education, health, peace education, you name it.
Wow, so they're really connecting language learning to the real world.
Big time. And they use this thing called task-based learning.
Task-based learning.
Yeah, it's a model where students learn by completing tasks that mimic real-world situations.
Well, okay, I'm following.
So instead of just doing, like, grammar exercises, they might be working together to, I don't know, plan a community garden or create a presentation about a local environmental issue, all in English.
Oh, that makes so much more sense than just memorizing vocabulary lists.
I know, right? And they're not just sticking to task-based learning. They also incorporate project-based learning and problem-based learning into their approach.
Wow, it sounds like they're really giving students the opportunity to use English in a meaningful way.
Yeah, they want their students to feel confident using English in all sorts of real-world situations.
That's great. Now, what about their Spanish language curriculum?
So their Spanish program shares that same focus on communication and critical thinking. But understandably, they put a little more emphasis on appreciating Colombian culture and literature.
That makes sense.
It's their native language, right?
Yeah.
So they're really trying to help students develop a deeper understanding of their own cultural heritage.
Yeah, going beyond just the mechanics of the language.
Exactly. And they use a lot of active learning methodologies, encouraging students to engage with the language in a really dynamic way.
Like what?
Oh, things like debates, role-playing, creating their own stories and poems. And they're not afraid to incorporate technology either. You know, things like interactive simulations, online collaboration tools.
Smart, using all the tools available.
Right. And their assessment methods are really interesting, too. They use a mix of rubrics, projects, portfolios.
So it's not just about standardized tests.
Nope. They want to get a more holistic picture of each student's understanding and progress.
Okay, on to math. I'm curious to see what they're doing there.
Well, they're really going all out to make math enjoyable and relatable.
Relatable math. That sounds like a challenge.
Right, but they're doing it. They're using all sorts of engaging activities and real-world examples to help students see the relevance of math in their lives.
Interesting.
Yeah, and their teaching methods emphasize active learning and meaningful engagement, putting the students at the center of the learning process.
So no more boring lectures and worksheets.
They're trying to move away from that traditional model as much as possible.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, and they've identified this need to help students improve their communication, argumentation, and justification skills in mathematics.
So it's not just about finding the right answer, it's about being able to explain your thinking.
Exactly. And they use a variety of teaching methods to cater to different learning styles.
Yeah.
You know, things like problem solving, modeling, reasoning exercises.
It sounds like they're really trying to make math accessible to everyone.
Yeah, they are. And they're doing it in a data-driven way, carefully analyzing student demographics and learning challenges to make sure their instruction is effective.
That's impressive. All right, last but not least, let's talk about technology and informatics.
All right, so technology, I mean, in today's world, it's just as important as reading and writing, right?
Absolutely. It's the foundation for so many things.
And this school knows it. They're all about equipping students with practical tech skills that they can use in their daily lives.
So it's not just about learning how to code.
No, it's about being a responsible and informed digital citizen.
Right, understanding the impact technology has on our world.
Exactly. And they're really big on encouraging critical thinking through something called algorithmic thinking.
Algorithmic thinking? Okay, that one sounds a little intimidating.
It does, but it's basically about breaking down problems into steps and creating a logical sequence of instructions to solve them.
So it's about understanding the logic behind the technology we use every day.
Yeah. And they have all these amazing projects that bring these concepts to life.
Like what?
Oh, there's this one called the Organoponics Project.
Organoponics? What's that?
Well, it involves using technology to create a sustainable urban garden. And students are involved in everything from designing the system to monitoring plant growth.
Wow, that's incredible. So they're not just teaching about technology, they're showing students how to use it to solve real-world problems.
Exactly. And then there's the Picasso Project. where students use technology for creative expression and to design solutions for community issues.
Those sound like some pretty amazing projects.
They are. And in their garden project, they take it to a whole other level. They're having students design their own app to track plant growth.
Seriously, that's amazing.
I know. They're learning about coding, design thinking, all in the context of a real-world project.
Wow, I'm seriously impressed by everything this school is doing.
Me too. They're really pushing the boundaries of what education could be.
So we're back. And I don't know about you, but my mind is still buzzing from all the amazing things that Colegio Esmeralda Arboleda David is doing.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, that's for sure.
It really is. And it's making me think, what are the long-term implications of this kind of approach to education?
Right. Like, how does it actually impact the students' lives?
Yeah.
Beyond just getting good grades.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Imagine graduating from high school and already having tackled real community problems.
Yeah, not just like read about them in a textbook.
Right. Like actually having designed your own app or helped to find a solution to a local environmental issue, you'd be so far ahead of the curve.
Oh, totally. It's like they're not just preparing students for the future, they're empowering them to shape the future.
I love that. And it's not just about the skills, it's about the mindset too.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
Well, imagine a generation of young people who are comfortable with ambiguity, who are used to tackling challenges head on, and who are passionate about making a difference. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah, it is. But let's be real. There have to be some challenges to implementing this kind of approach, right?
Oh, for sure. It's not all easy peasy. I mean, one of the biggest challenges I see is the need for highly skilled and adaptable teachers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You can't just hand a teacher a textbook and say, okay, go teach project-based learning, right?
Exactly. It requires a different set of skills, a willingness to be more of a facilitator or a guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage, so to speak.
Yeah, and it takes a certain kind of personality, too, right? You got to be comfortable with a little bit of chaos.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And think about the resources, too. Not every school has access to a garden, or partnerships with all these community organizations.
That's true. And not to mention the technology.
Exactly. Some of these projects require some pretty sophisticated tech.
Yeah. So there's definitely a risk that this kind of innovative approach could actually widen the gap between schools that have resources and schools that don't.
Right. That's something to be mindful of, for sure.
Yeah. And even if a school does have the resources, there's still the challenge of assessment, right? How do you measure the impact of this kind of learning?
Oh, that's a tough one. Standardized tests don't really capture things like creativity or collaboration or...
Critical thinking.
Yeah, critical thinking. They're just not designed for that.
Right. So schools would need to develop new assessment tools and methods that actually reflect the skills and knowledge students are gaining.
Exactly, which is a whole other challenge in itself.
It is.
Yeah.
But, I think what's so exciting about Colegio Esmeralda Arboleda David is that they're willing to experiment, to try new things, to figure it out as they go along.
I agree. They're like pioneers in a new educational landscape, blazing a trail for others to follow.
Yeah, and their willingness to push the boundaries of traditional education is so inspiring. It's a reminder that education doesn't have to be this one-size-fits-all standardized system.
Absolutely. There's so much room for innovation and creativity.
Totally. And I think Colegio Esmeralda Arboleda David is a great example of what's possible when we start thinking outside the box.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I think their story is a really important reminder that education isn't just about preparing students for the future.
Right.
It's about giving them the tools and the mindset to create a better future.
Beautifully said. So, having explored both the potential benefits and challenges of this approach, I think we've reached a natural stopping point for this part of our deep dive.
Yeah, good idea. Let's take a break and come back refreshed for our final thoughts.
Sounds good to me.
And we're back for our final thoughts on Colegio Esmeralda Arboleda David.
It's been a whirlwind tour of their innovative approach to education.
It really has. So much to process. I think it would be helpful to step back and just, highlight some of the key takeaways.
Yeah, good idea. For me, what stands out is their unwavering commitment to connecting learning to real-world issues. It's not just theoretical knowledge. It's about empowering students to actually make a difference.
Right, forget the textbook, let's get out there and do something.
Exactly. They're not just learning about science, they're doing science. They're not just reading about social issues, they're tackling them head on.
And remember those metacognitive strategies they use in arts education? I thought that was so interesting.
Oh, me too. It's like they're teaching kids how to be better learners overall, not just in art class.
Exactly. It's all about equipping them with the tools to be lifelong learners.
Yeah.
And, adapt to whatever challenges the future throws at them.
And they do all of this with a focus on holistic education.
Yes. Nurturing creativity, fostering emotional intelligence, emphasizing social and environmental responsibility. So the whole package.
It makes you wonder, what would education look like if more schools adopted this kind of approach?
That's the question, isn't it? I think Colegio Esmeralda Arboleda David is giving us a glimpse of what's possible.
I agree. It's inspiring.
It really is. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Just this. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this journey to Bogota. Until next time, keep those minds curious.